Okay, just some revisiting to our goals of Career Preparation Academy. By the end of Career Preparation Academy, and specifically by the end of this session, you will have the ability to increase your professional prospects through, improving or developing your resume and LinkedIn profile. And another goal of our, the program as a whole is to demonstrate, you be able to demonstrate some professional skills and implement professional network strategies. That's being said, for today's training, we will use the term or the terms and words, resume and CV, to mean the same thing. Some people, they call it resume and some people call it, CV. But I was thinking about, even as a resume, as a practice, I don't know how long in the history we go back to where we started writing resume, but I remember before, like 50 years ago, especially in Iraq, nobody was writing resume because a lot of jobs or work was family. I grew up in Nineveh on a small farm. I lived on the farm for 20 years. I never handed a resume to my grandfather saying, okay, here's my resume. I want to be an employee on the farm. No, I grew up doing that. So it's kind of become a new thing, not a new thing, but it's become more popular. And this resume, there's something called a resume. It does need some practice, does need some training how to write it, because we're living in an era that we start to work with other companies and business. Maybe some of you already is in their own business, but thinking about it that way, it would be very funny if I handed my grandfather a resume talking to him about my skills, because I never did that. I was a good farmer too, by the way. Yeah, so in this session, we have some objectives for you. We're hoping by the end of the session, you recognize the purpose of resume. Why do we do resume? Why we write resume? And then talk about, we also hoping that you have the ability to create your own resume with the different parts that goes into the resume. If you don't have a resume, but if you have a resume, we're hoping that you will update your resume based on the tips and recommendation we provide today. So what is a resume? What is this thing that we call it a resume or a CV? It's basically a document of 1 page to 2 pages with a written description that talks about you, that represent you, your professional experience, how long you've been working, what type of work do. It's a document that kind of representation of your employment or your professional or work background. You will provide this, the way it works, you provide, as I mentioned in the beginning, you provide this to the employer, whether company, institute, anywhere you apply for a position. In this resume, these documents, there are different parts of the resume or the CV. We start with the qualification summary of your qualification, skills you have, some of the skills you're gaining through programs like Career Preparation Academy, the education you've already finished, if you're still a student, work history, experience whenever you worked, and in additional to work, any volunteer or additional experience you may have. Okay, so with that, we have to ask you one question here, or maybe two questions. One of them, if you currently have a resume or a CV, if you have a CV, please put one in the chat if it's yes, if you already have a resume. So I see many people already have resume. That's amazing. It's mean you already start. And I know also some people reach out to me privately on WhatsApp asking for some help with the resume. This is this session. I didn't reply to them because I wanted them to come to this session to learn about the tips. And then if you have a resume, has anybody helped you create that resume? Did you receive any professional help with your resume? For example, from organization or any, put 5 if you did, if somebody helped you, whether it's organization, whether you went to a training. I see Iqbal answers yes. Aya, yeah, so I see Misk, many people have received professional help to build out their resume. That's amazing. Okay, so now we talk about what the resume is, who have the resume and who's still working on their resume. I want to provide some tips about how when writing a resume or you're writing your CV. In a CV, we usually have, when we talk about experience, we talk about past experience, and if we currently in a position, we talk about that. For any past experience that you're talking about, that you're not anymore in that job, in that position anymore, we use the past tense. We don't use the present tense. We also avoid I and me. I will show you some examples after this slide. There will be an example and there will be a template too. Meaning I avoid I and me. For example, if you were working as you're working on research for somebody and you finish that research, you wouldn't say I conduct the research. You will just say conducted research, or for example, interviewed 20 local grocery shop owners in Baghdad, on Batawin area, something like that. You won't use the I or me, but if you're still doing that, you will say interviews 5 or 10 local shop owners in Batawin or in an area in Baghdad, for example. That's what we mean by that. And then when it comes to the size of the writing, we call it font. If they come to the size of the writing, we use size 10 to 13. I usually use, depends on how long your resume, I usually use 11 to fit everything in 2 pages because I have a longer resume. But usually we don't go with too big or small font size of the writing. As I mentioned, we try to keep it 1 page or 2 pages. And we make sure, this is a very important point, we make sure to customize as much as possible by using keywords from job description. What do we mean by that? For example, let's say you graduated from finance and you have some finance experience and you're applying for 2 jobs, one job's with the bank and one job's with to be a financial specialist, within local organizations. So I know in the banks, there are different systems and different terminology they use. You're the same position, you apply, the language on the terms on your resume may slightly be different from the one you're applying for the bank than the one you're applying for the organization. Organization may be need your help with the timesheet, payroll, stuff like that. But banking, maybe it's account help, needs your help with account payables, using a different app or a different system. So we're trying to highlight this relevant work experience based on the job description. And our other point is, of course, there is a website for anything. There is a link for anything you can create, especially with the new era of AI. This is not a recommendation, but there is an example. This is like jobscan.com. You can optimize your resume there. But I will always recommend, even after you optimize it, you review it or have somebody to review it for any, mistakes or error. And we're trying to stay positive. Yeah. So if you're still with me and you can hear me clearly, please put 2 in the chat. So we stay on the same page. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, Stanley. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. I think this is amazing. Yeah. This is my favorite part of the academy.